Alrighty, step 11 is utilities, closing preparation, and the CO. Smallest part of this being the CO. So at this point, we are pretty far along in the transaction. We're through inspections, we're through appraisal. We've got our mortgage commitment, the title commitments in. Those things are being worked out. We're headed towards the finish line here. So we'll start with utilities. So what the buyer needs to do, so I have this email template which I'll send to, if you don't have this from me, just ask me for it. I send this to all my clients before closing with a bunch of information. It's way over the top. You don't need to be this in-depth, but that's just how I am. That's what I like to be. I go so far as to find the trash day for my clients. I call the township for that, or I'll call the listing agent, give them all of that info if I can. Give them the township number, give them who to call, and then I send this email again at closing just so they have this information again so it's fresh. So your buyers need to call the utility companies and put utilities in their name prior to settlement. They should do that, I usually say, at least maybe a week before closing at the latest if they can. The seller should not call. It should be the buyer that calls to put the utilities in their name. So they need to call or go online to PSE&G or whoever the electric gas companies are, the water company if there is one, if it's not through the township. Any private utility company is the responsibility of the buyer to put in their name prior to settlement. And they need to put it in their name for the day of closing. So if you're closing on October 15th, the buyer needs to call and put the utility in their name for October 15th so there's no lapse in service, and so the seller is not paying for the buyer's utility fees after settlement. So where do you get the utility information? I'm usually too impatient to wait for the listing agent to tell me. So if they have not told me the utility companies, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on the township website and I'm going to either call the township or look around. Usually on their website, they'll actually have the utility companies' names and email addresses. They'll have the trash day if you don't have it. You can also text or email the listing agent asking for this information. I get it directly from the seller. I also ask the listing agent to please provide me with any services the seller has right now that the buyer might want to continue. For example, security or a pest control or something like that. Anything else the seller thinks the buyer might want to continue on after settlement, please let me know. So I provide all of that information in this email here, and then the buyer can go ahead and set that up in their name. No cost or anything like that. One thing to note is municipal utilities or utilities that are paid for in the buyer's property taxes, or like the MUA bill that they get for Camden County for the sewer bill that they're getting through the county, a public utility, not through a private company like PSE&G. The title company will put those, I'm going to say that the title company is putting those utilities in the buyer's name. And really, the important thing to note here is the buyer does not need to call the township to put the water in their name if the water's through the township. They do not need to call the county to put their sewer in their name. That stuff is done automatically by the title company. And what you'll see is on your ALTA, on the closing document, which is something that you're going to request here as part of your next steps getting towards closing. You're going to see that the title companies don't really care about a private utility company like PSE&G. The reason is because my understanding is that if there's unpaid bills, they're not lienable on the house where a public utility is. So if the buyer's not paying their water bill that's due to the township, title company is going to know about it, where it's might not be known for a private company like PSE&G or New Jersey American Water or something like that. So. All right, so next is the closing preparations. Not a ton of stuff here. The buyer needs to keep doing what they're doing with their lender. The lender is going to continue to monitor their bank accounts, their credit, their employment. So it's a great time to remind your buyers not to make any major purchases, especially now that they know they're moving. Don't go buy a $2,000 couch. Don't go spend all your money. Could be a big issue. Anything that they feel that they should question, they should ask the lender, is it okay if they go and buy that thing? No new car, none of that kind of stuff, at least without permission prior to closing. So title and lender are in direct communication at this point. You might see a lot of emails going back and forth between the title and the lender. They're trying to work out when we're going to close, when what the numbers are and all that kind of stuff. You, at this point, should schedule your closing. So that's going to require you to do a couple things, and I usually do them at one time. This is between you, the buyer's agent, and the title company. You're going to want to go into DocuSign and grab a commission statement. Every title company wants a commission statement. If they haven't asked you for it yet, they will. And on that commission statement, I'll probably have another video for how to fill that out. It's very simple. If you have the buyer only, just go on the DocuSign, get the buyer only commission statement, put in what the check is going to be to Keller Williams from settlement, and put in what the check is going to be to the listing company from settlement on that commission statement. It's a one-page document. Send that over to the title company. And in that email, I would also say the buyers would like to schedule settlement for X time at X place on X day, so that they'll get that settlement scheduled, and they'll send out what's called a settlement notice. So it's the buyer's responsibility generally to schedule closing. They are responsible to pick the time and place. So usually I'll talk to the buyers and I'll say, let's do our final walkthrough in the morning, and then we'll close immediately afterward. So you as the agent, as part of this this process here, you need to get with the buyer and figure out what time they want to close. So if they want to close at 12, work backwards, figure out how long it's going to take for you to get to the settlement from the property. Give yourself an hour to be safe at the final walkthrough, and show up there and schedule that final walkthrough with the listing agent and the seller. Make sure at that point when you do your final walkthrough, everything should be out of the property, and there should be, we'll talk about that in the next video, should be room swept clean. You should be all good, ready to go. If there's issues, don't panic. That's why you're there. There are ways to get through it. It always happens. So it happens sometimes. It's just the nature of this business, and you can get through it. So schedule your settlement, get your commission request over to the title company, and the title company will then issue a settlement notice to all parties, to the lender, to the listing agent, to the seller, to the buyer, to you, to everybody, saying settlement is scheduled for 12 o'clock on Friday, October 15th, whatever, at the title company's office in Marlton. And you usually want to close at the title company's office if at all possible. So if they're closing around here, you want to close at the title company's office. So other than that, when you get close to settlement here, you're now looking for the lender to send you an email saying that the file is clear to close. Those are the magic words, clear to close. My favorite words to hear. That means that the buyer's basically done everything they need to get their mortgage, and we are ready to close now. We're ready to close whenever it is scheduled, and we're all good. Sometimes you have a deal where they get a clear to close like 20 days in or 18 days in. They're clear to close, and now we're just waiting for settlement. Other days you don't get the clear to close until like the morning of or the day before. So, you have to watch for that. Always be asking. We'll talk about in settlement some things that you need to ask the lender for to make sure that you're good, because the last thing you want to do is show up to settlement and not be ready for it and need to wait for 3 hours for the lender to get documents ready. So the last thing in this step to note is the CO. Since we have the buyer, generally that's not our responsibility. Getting the CO is responsibility of the seller, so you just need to email a listing agent. If you haven't by now, follow up. Hey, did you complete the CO inspection? Do you have a clean CO? Certificate of occupancy. Every township requires either a CO, a fire cert, or both. So you just need to get whatever was required for your township and then send a copy to the buyer, put a copy in command, and you're good to go. Next, we will talk about the actual settlement.